specifically in this idea of civil war, I feel like there's like a two-part thing. So, but actually the other part, I think it's mainly about like who is going to rule the Republicans or MAGA after Trump. Am I crazy?
No, that's I think gets to the heart of what this is. I think right now, these kind of fringe left people, or not even left, well, the left wants to exploit it. I think like the fringe right, I think there's a whole conversation we could have about how like Fuentes and those types have co-opted America first to mean something completely different than what it means.
Yeah.
They're trying to move the Overton window to their closer to their side, which I don't think is going to work, but they would love to appear
Okay,
to
so
have.
moving the over you're talking about the Groyper Nick Fuentes type, which is very Gen Z, especially Gen Z males are very interested in right now. Or I don't want to say
Yeah,
interested in, but they're just like listening to. Let's put it that way. And I don't think it's
well,
necessarily sometimes out of malice as much as it is entertainment,
yeah,
but entertainment can leak and turn into malice depending on, how convincing and charismatic the individual is, which Fuentes is.
yeah.
And so it's Tucker and everyone. But my question is like, how are we shifting this Overton window? Like, what does it mean to, like, in your opinion or what you're seeing, what does that shift mean? What's in the window if you were to shift it over, essentially?
I don't know that there's a cohesive thing. I think that they're trying to shift it, and I think the establishment is trying to shift it back to where the Republican
Yeah.
Party was before Trump. That's, I think, kind of obvious. I don't think Fuentes and those types of people, I think the only thing they really care about is hating Israel. I don't know who needs to hear this. There's not going to be another major war in the Middle East, in my opinion, for like another 15 years. People want to say that I mean, the biggest threat in the Middle East was the threat of Iran and its resistance axes. That's pretty much gone. The Houthis still have some firing power. The Iraqi militias in Iran, the Shia militias in Iraq were not really involved, so they still have some firepower. Hezbollah is like a third of its capacity. There might be another skiff between, but there's not going to be some other big thing. We're not going to be giving all of these weapons and aid to Israel anymore. We're going to dump what we don't need anymore from the global war on terror on them because we need to buy new weapons to fight in the Pacific. And that's kind of going to be it. We're not like they want
And
to
you
talk
think
about it.
that's going to happen within Trump's presidency?
Yeah, I think that they're going to kind of finish this stuff up. And I think what's going to happen is there's going to be some sort of like Middle Eastern NATO where like our commanders kind of tell everybody what to do, and then we kind of train people, we give them all weapons, and it's going to be like Israel, the Saudis, the Emiratis, like Turkey, all of these countries, and they're kind of going to fight their own battles. I hope. That's what I hope. And that's what Trump was trying to aim for in his first term. I think that that's where we're heading. So that's kind of this like Fuentes Groyper thing. I think that they like the memes and stuff. I think that there's a real issue with people clipping things that he said from years ago that are horrific.
Mhm.
And then people who only see those clips think that that's what he's talking about 100% of the time. And then the people who want to give him the benefit of the doubt because they do think he's entertaining are like, but he's so much more than that. You're fairly unfairly maligning him. It's like, well, I don't really know that it's unfair to use what he has said. Like, again, I don't think that that's unfair. But
Well,
like,
and it's also like some of the comments aren't exactly like 10 years ago. Some of the comments have to
yeah,
do specifically with JD Vance and
like now.
Usha and
Yeah.
like, yeah, as in they were in the last like year or two. So
Right.
anyone who's just kind of like flippantly going, he's not
But
that bad.
I think that that's an issue of long form versus short form in general. Long
Hmm.
form, the only people who listen to long form, like you and me, or Fuentes or Tucker or any of these people, they want to give them the benefit of the doubt. And then they say these really crazy things that can get clipped. We don't do this. They do this that get clipped. And then people act like it's all the clips. And so it's like you're almost battling two different people and it's the same person and it's all these things. But I think that that's where things get lost in translation. But I think this like Gen Z movement, I don't think that they necessarily want anything besides the hating Israel piece. I think that they want to feel like they're in control. I don't know. I
Well,
don't even know what they want. What do you think?
what so I was thinking about this. So there's two things happening. So I sent you this article from the Federalist, which was published
Yes.
earlier this month,
And I totally
which
agree with that.
yeah, so I'm gonna just share it here just so everybody can see it if you guys are watching. Not presentation, this one. It's like, that's the wrong one. And so in this article, it says the attacks on Heritage and Kevin Roberts are really about foreign policy and JD Vance. Now, I'm not going to read the whole article here, but if I was to summarize it for you, they're basically pointing out, yes, we can discuss Fuentes. We can discuss what he says. We can discuss how the Heritage Foundation handled the situation. But specifically, the argument that this article is making is that the debate of Fuentes and Tucker Carlson having Fuentes on and the resistance to what's the word I'm looking for? Like this whole like canceling, and I don't want to get into the ins and out. We already have discussed the ins and outs of like what's canceling and what's the proper way. That's not what I'm trying to discuss here. What this article is arguing is that there is a contingent within the Republican Party that many would categorize as neocons or, just your traditional old school, maybe Bush Republican type that are vying to battle out what the Trump administration or what happens after the Trump administration, what the Republican Party will be and what MAGA will be. And I thought this particular article, and I'll share a link to this article in the show notes if you guys want to read it, kind of lays out that case, and that they're using this debate of Fuentes, Tucker, anti-Semitism, Israel to actually like to create more division to pull the party away from JD Vance, who is the current heir apparent if we were to continue on. Because, I mean, I know Trump jokes about it and he has 2028 hats, but he's not running for president again.
No.
So the hope is that they want to like pull this party back under the, neocon is really the only description I can like generally come up with. But you know who
Yeah.
I'm talking about. I'm talking about like, the Bush. It's not even like Mitt Romney still exists, but that's the type that like a Lindsey Graham type who
Yeah.
actually campaigned against Vance, even though Lindsey Graham acts like he's all in love with the president now. I don't trust that man at all in
Yeah.
any way, shape, or form. So
Yeah.
is that what you've seen too, battling out? I think that's part of it.
Yeah, but I also think it's a really simplistic understanding of it. Like, what would a
Well, I
super
think that is
neocon?
what is bringing up this whole like,
Okay,
because
what
there's
I
this demand from JD Vance, you must announce or you must
yeah.
come out and criticize. And for all these
Well,
other people, and that, like, honestly, frankly, that kind of annoys me because if you have the vice president coming out talking about Nick Fuentes and denouncing Nick Fuentes and everything, when he's already been critical of Fuentes, clearly,
right,
I mean, he said some disgusting things about his wife. So I don't think he's a fan. So this demand of like, you must stand on the pulpit or behind the vice presidential seal and denounce him is only going to bring more attention to him. So like, I find
right.
that entire narrative annoying.
I totally agree. When I say that it's simplistic, I think in general, Americans' ideas about foreign policy are simplistic. So that's why, like, these people who know better, like Lindsey Graham and like Tucker Carlson,
Uh-huh.
blanket calling all these people isolationists or neocons, they're playing into something that they know that the audience doesn't fully understand. And I think that that's super dishonest of both of them, and it really bothers me. And you're right, like, yeah, it's beneath the office of the vice president of the United States to comment on what right wing podcasters are saying. And also, when people try and say, oh, it's going to be, Zoran Mandami and the Democrats versus Nick Fuentes in the right. No, because Zoran Mandami has power. He's a mayor.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he can do things. Nick Fuentes can say things. Saying things and having the government's power and arm to do things are two very different things. Not to say that there's no problems with Fuentes, but like, no, it's not right wing podcasters versus crazy left wing lunatic like elected officials. No, sorry. No, that's not the choice. The choice is between normal, rational JD Vance Republicans and other Republicans. Everybody can be in that tent who may have friendships with Tucker, who is outside of the Overton window now, versus crazy left wing lunatic Democrat elected officials. That's what the fight is. You don't get to define us by our podcasters. Sorry. Like,
Well, and I
I don't
think there's a
know.
big difference too, because on the left, you're seeing a rise of DSA candidates.
Yeah.
Like currently, neighbor Georgia has a DSA candidate running for governor. You've seen
Yeah.
them running for mayor. Seattle right now, the mayor of Seattle is neck and neck. And I don't know if she's DSA, but she's definitely like socialist friendly for sure. So I think we're having completely different issues. Now, however, in that realm, that's not to say that there shouldn't be some concern about, because there's a lot of discussion about like young men, which I think is interesting because like nobody talks about the young women that are just going like
Crazy.
crazy on the left. And you don't hear a lot of Republicans being like, well, what are we going to do to entice these young women to come back? Which is a discussion for another day because I don't like, we have a list of things to discuss.
Uh-huh.
But specifically, I think overall, both for the women, for young women and young men, this interest in socialism, like Mondani's versus, this Groyper energy, which is very, I don't even know if nationalist, it's very nihilistic with a sprinkle with some like nationalism, but I think it's all rooted in what are they expecting to see in the future? Like, what is in store for me in the future? Which I think is where the affordability economy discussion comes in.
Total. Well, what I really think it is, I don't think it's starting to bother me. I saw some girl at the Daily Wire who was like, our generation is conservative and we're mad that Trump's not conservative enough. That's not what it is.
That,
I
yeah,
don't even
Isabel Brown said that. I saw that.
Yeah, okay, is that her name? I don't remember her name, I'm sorry. And then there was this I'm seeing all these, like, left-wing people, it's like, "No, actually, the young people are socialists." I don't think young people in general have really intense beliefs about socialism or conservatism.
Conservatism or
Yeah,
capitalism.
yeah.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think it's very, unfortunately, I think it's very I don't want to say simplistic because it sounds like dismissive and that's not my intent, but it's not something that like I grew up with certain type of messaging throughout my, schooling. The Cold War was around when I was young. I was in my formative years during the war on terror. It was all very pro capitalist, pro America, that kind of traditional. And I think because we've removed a lot of like civics and those type of lessons out from the school, and also a lot of the formative years were spent at home behind a computer in a Zoom class for many of the Gen Z, especially that are coming up right now. I don't think they're like particularly committed to one economic policy over another as much as like they just want to feel that there is a future and that they can live comfortably, even though I don't know what comfortably means to them because I think to them
I it's something
is
different, yeah.
different than what I would describe as comfortably. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I think that Gen Z overall doesn't doesn't have the same feelings towards, like, normal labels that we have. And then I think on top of that, I think that they just want change, and they're open to change whether it be socialism or hyper-nationalism. Like, they just want something different. I think I saw something yesterday that unemployment for 18 to 24-year-olds is at almost 10%. So these are a lot of people and the last time it was that low was during COVID. So these are like right at the beginning. So these are people with a lot of time on their hands who are watching a lot of content, apparently, whether it be from Hassan Piker or Fuentes, who have these kind of unorthodox beliefs. They don't believe everything. They think it's entertaining. They don't want to just be scolded. They're not going to just sit and be scolded by people. Well, you're
No,
this or you're that.
especially not after
Yeah.
everything